I usually have my therapy appointment on a Tuesday, and I've been told today that I have 2 new therapists. Very unusually tall men. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's true. I'm Curtin Davina, and this is
Kamor Sain, licensed therapist.
Licensed therapist, talking to Xalavier Nelson Jr. about a licensed game.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. TMNT.
TT. TT. Yeah.
If you keep saying it enough times, you will eventually hit the end of the loop, and then it goes back, and you start saying TMNT again, and so it's just a really nice.
Can you do it 3 times in a row and slow down with each repetition?
TMNT, TT, TMNT, TT, TMNT.
Are you feeling relaxed? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what TMNT TT is?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown is a turn-based beat-em-up set after the death of Shredder and Splinter in a original interpretation of the universe, where the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are on the cusp of adulthood, and they get to decide not just whether or not they need to be in each other's life, but whether they want to across the course of a breathtaking campaign.
That's a lot of questions there. Firstly, how do you get involved with TMNT? Because you have a bunch of games out, very unique games, very you and your team, but this is kind of a big pivot into something else. How did you get there?
Thank you for asking. Of course, it did begin with my childhood.
Yes.
No.
And now as you're moving into adulthood, you're making a game about your childhood figures who are also becoming adults.
And it's my father's fault, I think.
Okay,
Or is it my mother's fault?
I learned it from you.
Yeah. So we have a track record of making a lot of games in a lot of different spaces. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown will be our 17th in 6 years, because we have a game coming out next month as well called Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. And that track record got the attention of Paramount. We just talked about making something together. We kept looking for a potential thing to make. And we showed them one of the games that we were developing at one point, Teenage Demon Slayer Society, a turn-based take on a character action game. And in the meeting, I said, what if this was a TMNT game? Because I was just scrolling through the list of sort of properties they had.
They both have teenage.
So you mentioned that
Adult
it started off as an action game, right? Like you wanted to feel like an action game.
A turn-based game that feels like an action
So
game.
how do you marry those two in your mind? How do you make a turn-based game feel like an action game?
A lot of that is pacing. The strategy game problem that you can see, and it's in almost anything, is the safest route is the least interesting one, but also the one that means that you get to continue playing the game. And building a game where in our case, we are translating beat 'em up mechanics into a turn-based format consistently in weird ways. So the stage transforms as you play. You're not just presented with a map, it literally auto-scrolls. So if you don't move on a turn, you will be dropped into the abyss along with the rest of your enemies. The pacing and the idea of choosing and building your collection of actions and in a turn-based format, using them to their fullest extent, such that you don't just move and shoot and wait for people to hit you.
Right.
You're Raphael. You're gonna plunge into a group of people, you're gonna take out 6 guys, and then you're gonna wait to get hit. And then you're gonna do it even harder the next turn.
Yeah.
But what does it actually look like in terms of like the beat 'em up part of it? Like what, like when you're in a turn-based thing, and do you actually do the button pressing the beat 'em up thing, or is the beat 'em up being a way of how the world and levels sort of pushed and provoked?
It's in the structure of the game, and it's also in what you're doing. So you do still, like a beat 'em up, have lives. When the game auto scrolls, it does a big go, and you are with actually more actions than you'd have in a beat 'em up, because you have the standard jump, kick, punch, etc. Because it's a turn-based game, we can have all sorts of weird things like, come over here, Raphael whips towards an enemy and drags them closer and can chain that into a combo that results in them exploding into oblivion or getting kicked off of a rooftop.
And I saw a bunch of the game, and it's like it also kind of manifests in the animations.
Yes.
I thought they were really cool. There's like a motion to them that's very interesting. That usually it's like you run from one tile to the other, and then stop, and then something happens. Whereas this feels like it's happening along the way. So can you tell us about that a bit?
So a lot of that was inspired by Hitman Go
okay.
and the approach of that studio in how you could make little figurines, and in that game's case, static figurines, feel really dynamic and interesting by moving around just a frozen thing. By the way, should we address my fear of water at some point, or should I just continue?
You can go into fear of water now.
Okay, well, let me finish this one, and then we'll go into fear of water. So,
That's good compartmentalization.
Yeah, the first the Nintendo TMNT game had an awful water level.
Must have happened.
that isn't where it started, but we can blame it.
Yeah.
Would that be
Okay.
healthy?
Yeah. Let me ask. Can I talk to your other therapist and find out?
So, inspired by Hitman Go, saying we can. Strange Scaffold is always looking for efficient ways to deliver really meaningful experiences. In our case, looking again for interesting, meaningful language we can play with, turning the TMNT and their enemies into action figures that, alongside the VFX and all the cool video game tools we have, are really just switching between different poses and having the little figurine just like flip through the air before you land. Both makes the typical tactics game feel more dynamic and ends up being a game that we can, at our scale, build. We really embrace constraints as allowing us to be more creative, and that's part of why also Paramount let us take the swings we did.
To that point, as prolific as you are, with every single game you make, there is a very rarely are you repeating genres. Like there are things that are leaking over there and there, whether it's El Paso elsewhere and shooting, and obviously I'm Your Beast is a shooter, but two totally different perspectives. What is the creative process when you are starting with, say, a genre? Because in this case, you had this sort of thing, you had experimented with the other game, and then you're applying it to TMNT, versus having, say, an idea for a story and then creating a genre from that idea.
It was a really interesting practice of reinterpretation to a degree that I think games used to be better at. Games in the past actually used to explore more of this reinterpretation from a common tech foundation. So in Teenage Demon Slayer Society, we're looking at character action tropes, S ranks, juggles, etc. And beat 'em ups have some of the similar language, but a very different momentum and purpose. And so embracing the opportunity to look at our own code and tech base, which we still get to own and use after we finish shipping TMNT, embracing what it means to, in a beat 'em up format, recontextualize all the interesting tech we built and build a new tech, but on a existing foundation to allow for this experience to exist. It means that we have made this game in 18 months, where the typical developed game, especially if it's licensed, is these days taking several years.
Yeah. And one thing I really love about it, you mentioned the kind of like the way the art style works and the combat works, and it comes together in a really cool way that it evokes that young Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan in me, and that the way the game moves. It's like I remember picking up two figures and smashing them together and being like, I'm fighting, and creating the dialogues. And when I was watching the gameplay videos of people playing it, because the demo is out now on Steam, it was exactly that same kind of vibe. So what was like kind of bringing your childhood to life, and how do you approach that as an adult, knowing now that, you know, there's more themes that you can explore? Because, you know, as you're a kid, you're just like, green dudes beating each other up, but then you look at it as, you know, as an adult, and you're like, this is about a bunch of wayward teens and fatherhood and, and you know, reptiles. And
I think a lot of that comes from looking at that source material from an adult lens and not trying to remove the kid from it. One of my pet peeves is when I see a game or a movie say, we're gonna deconstruct a classic license and make everything dark and gritty, and the characters say curse words, and that doesn't actually say something new with the source material or look at it in a new light. It, to my sense of taste, feels very cynical. So the TMNT, from their very first comic appearances, have a richness to them, even a satire to them, that is a lot easier to identify as an adult now. And pulling on those themes and investing it with some of the personal experiences I've been going through alongside the rest of my team to say, making the TMNT older doesn't mean making them less themselves. It involves looking at them through a different spectrum that still appeals to the kid in you and can be something you come back to when you're older and makes you cry. It's a Strange Scaffold goal for pretty much all of our stuff.
the thing that is interesting to me about your game is you say they're on the cusp of a change in their life, right? Their maturation, their father figure is dead, and also the person who gave them purpose in life, Shredder, in a lot of ways is also gone. What is that kind of period that you're mentioning, like they're on the cusp of like a change in their lifetime? What does that really mean? And how do you approach that while also knowing that there's a youthfulness and like an innocence to this that you still need to have, but you're also in a transitionary period where most of the teenagers would let that go?
Yeah, I love how you identified that teenagers at a certain point try to let go of what they see as their kiddish innocence. And this is why it's so useful for there to be 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because you get 4 different opportunities to explore how teens, as they approach adulthood, experience that. So these are the Turtles as they're about 17, 18. That's what it means to be on the cusp of adulthood. They've grown up, they've had a bunch of adventures, they have battle scars on their shells and on their skin that you don't usually see applied to these pristine comic book characters, action figures, the cartoons that you watched as a kid. And along with those battle scars is experience and a growing into oneself. And each one of them is doing that in a different way. Raphael is embracing the young bachelor life. He's roommates with Casey Jones in our universe. He's doing kind of detective stuff with him, making their own way through life. Donnie has gone full hermit. He's riding around in the battle bus. That was basically his part of the inheritance. And he's like, I'm gonna go around and do technology and be just a little weirdo and embrace that because there's no one to tell me I can't. Leonardo, his sense of responsibility, he might be my favorite character arc in the game. His sense of responsibility has driven him to basically be a Batman-style vigilante, and you get to see almost like the burnout of he has so internalized that he's the leader of the group under a leader, Splinter. And when Splinter's gone, him saying, I am the responsible one, and telling him, and that being the story he told himself, is manifesting so strongly and so self-destructively that his brothers need to kind of pull him out of that cycle. And finally, you have Michelangelo, who, as the heart of the group, as he's seeing the group go further and further apart organically, he's taking care of the lair. He's stoking the hearth fires, looking for an opportunity to reunite his family and hoping it doesn't drift away as they all find their own interpretation of success or purpose.
It's interesting that you've kind of switched roles for some of them. In the way that Raphael, I would have envisioned being he's the loner. He's like the rebel of the group. But in cases that he's the one, and I think it makes perfect sense that he would be like, end up being like the one who would ease off that, the angst maybe, if you will.
Yeah.
Like hang out with Casey Jones. And then it's Leonardo who's the one who like takes on too much responsibility and like takes it to an extreme. How are you balancing like these different dynamics of characters who seem one way or another going in different directions, as you do as an adult, as a natural person, you those things separate ways. How are you balancing that dynamic when they have to work together in a game that is a tactical takedown game?
One of the key parts and constraints of our engine is that you can't have more than one playable character at a time.
Okay.
So knowing that constraint, we built a story and a gameplay momentum and progression that relied on and played into the fact that these are the turtles all working apart to solve a mutual problem. Let's make the story about that too. And I think one of my favorite pieces of this and one of the gut punches when you see the relationship between the mechanics and the context of it narratively is our version of assist attacks is instead of your brother leaping in to help you, it's a drone, because Donnie basically invented out the need for them to work together. He was like, it's inconvenient to get from 4th Street to 24th Street. I'm just gonna get a drone that does what I would basically do, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And you can imagine Mikey just being like, that sounds great, Donnie. And in our game, we have one of the assist attacks. We have 4 assist attacks, each of which aligns with a particular turtle specialization. The Mikey drone drops you pizza, which gives you health and is a really nice emergency button if you're close to death. But my favorite one is something called Pep Talk, because it's the Leo drone. Leo drone comes in, broadcasts a hologram of Leo giving you a recorded pep talk, because you don't get that much opportunity to talk anymore. And it gives you a little temporary boost to your damage and your evasion, but the knowledge that because you don't hang out anymore, all you've got is the recording that you've put onto your drone is a way that we're trying to make our limitations, our gameplay, and our narrative work together to make you feel feelings and emotions when you see that hologram come in and you're like, I do wish Leo was here. I do feel Michelangelo's angst.
That, if they're on their own, obviously on the videos there's a lot of dialogue. Does that mean that it's naturally more like introspective with these characters? Are they like talking to themselves, or who are they conversing with other than enemies to say like, I'm gonna kick your ass?
So there is some introspective dialogue, there is dialogue with enemies, but a lot of it is them talking over the phone, and among other things, that gives us another way to learn about the turtles. Donnie builds a TurtleCom network. Oh, Leo hasn't been answering his calls. He didn't think that he had to. And he barges into an existing group chat with the rest of the brothers saying, hey, status report everyone. They're like, we've been trying to get a hold of you. He gives some orders and blinks out, and you get to see all of them in a very realistic way that is reminiscent of our own lives.
Yeah.
Be like, did this dude really just come in, say some stuff, and get back? Where is he? Is he safe? You get to worry about your brother in real time.
Well, as we come to a close on this session,
Yeah.
how are you feeling?
How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling unburdened. I'm feeling lighter.
Yeah.
Do you take my insurance?
We'll
have to talk about that.
yeah,
I think
we'll-
we're actually out of
We'll
network.
have to be talking about that. You might have to talk to someone on your own side if you.
Yeah,
really
we'll
want to
figure that out with you,
at a
but-
different time.
yeah.
Anyways, this has been Xalavier Nelson Jr. This has been Timur Hussein. I'm Kurt Navina. This has been a very calming session, maybe depending on who you are or how what if you don't like water. Thanks, folks. This is our GDC coverage. Till next time. Also, wait, hold on. When does the game come out?
May 22nd.
There you go.
2 months.
22nd.
You don't have to wait that long.
Yeah, demo's out now.
All right. See you, folks.